G'day everyone. A couple of years ago, Matthew and Son released a dress watch called the JCB. Now, at the time, I dismissed it and wasn't interested in it at all, especially as I already owned an Irukandji. But similar to Homer Simpson and the calling to attend clown college, that watch kept intruding into my thoughts to a point where one day I just said, "That's it," went ahead and bought one. So let's get crackin' malackin' and look at the JCB offering from MAS. So to begin with, you've got a case diameter of 37.5mm or 40.9mm with the crown, a lug tip to lug tip of 46mm, case thickness of 12.5mm, lug width of 20mm, and it weighs in at 109 grams on its bracelet, includes 50 meters of water resistance, a double dome sapphire crystal, and powering it all is a Miyota 9039 automatic movement. Perhaps one of the greatest strengths of this watch is the aesthetic. As Matthew's website mentions, the JCB was inspired by his grandfather's own vintage piece, but in style, size, and design. So here you have something that looks familiar yet somehow different. Not quite one of a kind, but far from being a homage or knockoff even. On first glance, it's easy to see the vintage inspiration on this watch, and the dial is Exhibit A. It somehow manages to look simple and minimalist, yet elegant and eye-catching at the same time. And part of that's thanks to that crimson red dial. The colour alone is enough to warrant a second glance, but the way it can change contrast from a dark to a more velvety appearance in the light is a nice surprise. Another draw card to that dial are the applied rectangular gold indices at the hour markers with thicker lume-filled indices at each quarter hour. The red and gold combination on this dial has a very strong presence, but to help balance it a bit, you've got these printed Arabic numerals in white, along with small circular minute markers running around the outer track. Everything here is well proportioned. That minute track is visible when you need it for setting or checking the time, but it's small and out of the way enough so it doesn't detract from the radiance of the dial. The gold indices are thick enough to help with legibility, and the Arabic numerals, while larger, are tastefully done with an almost cursive writing appearance, giving it a more old-timey look. Yet in spite of the larger indices, the dial doesn't look cramped and there's still a sea of red to be seen. Underneath the 12 text, you've got the MAS hourglass logo in white, and above the 6th position you've got automatic printed in a dull gold colour. The size of the logo I feel is just right, although I wouldn't want it any bigger. But I love how they included a single automatic line of text at the bottom. It stops the dial from looking too blank at the bottom, but it's so faint in darker light you'll barely notice it, giving you more time to enjoy looking at the dial. The baton hands are lume filled with gold surrounding their edges. The benefit of this, along with having lume, is that it helps keep to the red and gold theme of the watch, but that lume also helps with everyday legibility, as I feel without it those hands would be hard to read in low light. And I'm happy with the thickness and length of them, as they're easy to read and the hour hand sits a bit below each indice. The minute hand reaches all the way to that minute track, and dancing around the dial is a very thin gold seconds hand, with a small arrow on one end and the lollipop counterweight on the other. And in case you haven't noticed, that seconds hand is ticking away at over 28,000 beats per hour, and that's thanks to the Miyota 9000 movement inside. I'm really thrilled that they chose this movement because it really gives that golden seconds hand a buttery smooth sweep across the dial, and somehow it just makes everything look even more elegant. The gold case has an interesting finish with a polished bezel and sides, and a more matte style on the top of the lugs. Normally I prefer it if they chose a theme rather than mixing finishing types, but it isn't that noticeable. And now to the modern elements. The crown is signed with the MAS logo and uses a screw down mechanism. It's very easy to unscrew and set the time with, and thanks to what I suspect is a coupling mechanism, threading and rescrewing the crown is a piece of cake. It seems superfluous to use a screw down crown for a dress watch with a modest 50 meter water resistance rating, but the fact they included it gives me this. Protecting the dial is a double dome sapphire crystal, which not only provides another dimension of beauty to that design but offers great scratch protection. The physical dimensions of the watch are a bit more modern compared to its older dressier peers, but it's still appropriate and well proportioned for those occasions. And the size is fairly universal, so it'll look great on most wrist types. The lugs do have a bit of a downward curve on the end, but they don't dig into the wrist. Turning the watch over, you have a blend of old and new school. The screw down case back breaks away from the gold trim with a stainless steel appearance, and proudly displays a stamped Scottish thistle front and centre. It adds yet another interesting element to the watch, and unlike laser etched designs, it'll remain there for many years to come. Running around that thistle are some of the modern specifications I mentioned before. This flavour of JCB comes with a black crocodile grain leather strap with gold buckle, along with a gold matching beads of rice bracelet. The leather strap is flexible, fairly sturdy and comfortable to wear, And that dark, subdued strap color is a logical choice for a watch face that's incredibly radiant. But the bracelet really takes the golden theme of this watch and ramps it up to 11. The gold in this bracelet isn't bright or shiny, but when worn with the watch, you'll be initially mesmerized by its intensity. The beads of rice design gives the JCB a more vintage and mature look, and despite there being some gaps in the bracelet, I'm yet to feel any hairs being pulled. It's also very friendly in helping you get that perfect fit thanks to the use of half links and, wait for it, 7 micro adjustments. And I thought the 6 on the Irukandji bracelet was great. As a thoughtful touch, the bracelet also came with quick release spring bars. They're simple enough to add to the included curved links and make it a far easier task when you want to throw it on and off. Like its Irukandji stablemate, a lot of thought, consideration and effort has gone into creating the JCB. So now we know the JCB has a lot of greatness to it, but it doesn't mean it's perfect. The 12.5mm case thickness isn't bad, but for a dress watch it is a bit on the chunky side. Admittedly, that is the result of crystal, and at least it doesn't feel wobbly or ungainly on the wrist. And for those that wear long sleeve shirts, rest assured it'll still fit without much bulge. Its design and presentation can also limit when you'd be able to wear this. It sits on the opposite end of the Seiko tuner I reviewed previously, where you'd be wearing this mostly in more formal settings, or, with a toned down leather strap, you could pull off a smart casual look. But I feel it looks a little too nice and dressy to wear for, say, your supermarket shop. So if you're mostly wearing watches in a more hands-on or casual environment, this one might be too over the top. Given that quick release spring bars were included for the bracelet, it would have been nice if the strap included these as well. So if you tend to switch between the stock strap and bracelet regularly, you'll still need a spring bar tool handy for this task. And as for lume, BGW9 lume is included on the hands and quarter hour indices. Those indices fade very quickly, but the hands hang on for a little bit before going out. Overall, it's pretty limited and won't have Seiko worried, but this is addressed. The fact it's there is a small bonus in itself. Although, if lume were to be a serious consideration for this watch, I would have put 2 applied indices at the 12 position just for better orientation. And unlike the Irukandji I reviewed where I found some glaring negatives, the JCB only has a few small ones, but also one thing to consider. The red dial and gold case look is very attractive and striking, but most aftermarket strap colors will clash with it and limit your choices if you like making changes, so this really isn't a strap monster. But at least with 20mm lug width, your choices won't be limited by size. The clasp on the bracelet is a bit too small and it has a very light and tinny feel to it, so I'm a little concerned on how long it's going to last with continued wear. And I really wish it included a push button deploy mechanism instead of having to rely on a fingernail or pinching the sides to undo it. The bracelet itself looks and feels nice on the wrist, but similar to the clasp, it is a bit on the light and rattly side. The crystal also has too much reflection going on in bright settings. Thankfully, it doesn't affect the legibility too badly when it happens, but an anti-reflective coating would have been a nice touch, especially as it's also tricky to get decent shots of it outdoors. And finally, the price is another consideration. For 500 Australian dollars, it isn't a bargain, but it's a reasonable price when you consider what you're getting. But for similar cash, you could pick up other dressy offerings. At this price point, the JCB has better specs and accessories compared to most of its peers with its sapphire crystal, high beat movement and choice of bands, but some people may prefer a dial with more features and dynamics, or just want to go with a known brand and its cachet, especially if it means paying a fair chunk less. I keep going back and comparing the JCB with the Irukandji, and while they are 2 completely different watches, they both share a very attractive, unique and well thought out design. But the JCB was designed to be a dress watch and, in my opinion, it performs that role nearly perfectly. Modest sizing and dimensions, good legibility, a simple yet elegant look, and if red isn't your bag, you can opt for this striking blue and rose gold look, or a steel grey offering if you're aiming for subtlety and a bit more wearing flexibility. If you're looking for a modern spec dress watch with a vintage look, the JCB is an easy recommendation from me, especially if you can pick one up during a sale. If you own one of these watches, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about it. But that's it for now, and thanks for watching, eh?